discourse since 2008. People seem to be thinking that, oh, you know, the ICJ, and especially since Guatemala, they get so aggressive, we better hurry up to the ICJ. So that is why the BPP felt the need to get out here and start trying this, make this rounds again, to make our people aware that this should not be viewed as a political issue. This is a national issue like never before. We are at one crossroads now where you really need to do some soul searching and say, I'm a Belizean before I want UDP or I'm PUP or BPP. I'm a Belizean. And what is in the best interest of this country? This generation need to do that soul checking and go vote on that referendum with as much information as they can get.
Well, yes, I pretty much echo all that Patrick says, and with regards to what he expressed in terms of going the route of the UN Security Council as being the preferred route for Belize, there is documentation that we can refer to dating back as early as 1975, and that predates the 1980 resolution, which paved the way for Belize to gain its independence with its territory intact. So we're saying since 75, the UN has had that stipulation with regards to this question of Guatemala's unfounded claim. And it just goes to show that it buttresses the position that we're putting forward. And it's very important that the public knows that that option is there. Because, as Patrick rightfully said, the powers that be have pushed solely one option, that being the ICJ. And that's where we're very big on full disclosure. It's important that full disclosure is given, especially with an issue as salient as this when it comes to Belize's territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Could you talk to us, the Belizean people, about what the United Nations said in 1975 with respect to the independence of Belize, how that should come about our territorial integrity, what should happen to territory?
Okay, well basically in a nutshell, because I don't have enough time to read the whole thing, but it set the tone in that all of the parties involved, that being the UK, the Belizean people, and Guatemala, need to go to the table. And with respect to this question that is hanging over our head, that is being pushed by Guatemala, that our territorial integrity must be maintained with regards to any decision that is made. And that's key. That's very, very critical, because that is diametrically opposed to what we've been fed since 2008 with regards to the compromise. And Patrick pointed out very, very clearly that when the question was put together, number one, it didn't have the amount of input that it should have from civil society, the general public, or what have you. There was virtually no consultation whatsoever. And had they alluded back to these original documents from 1975, 1980, with regards to UN resolutions, then, well, with all of the so-called learned attorneys that we have in this nation, you would have thought that they would have taken advantage of that, because what they've done effectively by signing that compromise with the stipulations and putting the question in the fashion that it is that they have sort of hamstrung Belize to a certain extent. And I want to point out that it's to a certain extent because, as we've said, if this issue does go to referendum, we have an opportunity as a people, not red, not blue, not green, not yellow, but as a Belizean people, to stop it there. And then we can recalibrate and go down the preferred path that is a preferred path for Belize.
If I could just read on the question of Belize, this is the actual resolution that was passed in the United Nations in December of 1975. So it's online. You can go and download these things. They're right there on the UN website. In clause 1 it says, reaffirms the inalienable rights of the people of Belize to self-determination and independence. At 2 it says, declares that the inviolability and territorial integrity of Belize must be preserved. At 3 it says, calls upon all states to respect the right of the people of Belize to self-determination, independence, and territorial integrity, and to facilitate the attainment by them of their goal of a secure independence. I'll skip 4 and go to 5. 5 says, declares that any proposal for the resolution of these differences of opinion that may emerge from the negotiations between the administering power, referencing the UK, and the government of Guatemala must be in accordance with the paragraphs 1 and 2 above, which reaffirms the inalienable right and declares territorial territorial integrity. So this resolution 3432 was passed in 1975. The General Assembly of the United Nations on the question of Belize. It reaffirmed this resolution every subsequent year, 76, 77, 78, 79. Now something happened in 79. What happened in 79 is that the non-aligned movements headed by Cuba at the time, numbering some 60, 70 countries total, they came together in 1979 and put their foot down and in effect passed their own resolution declaring Belize should be independent with all its territory intact. So after that 1979 resolution by the non-aligned countries, the following year the United Nations took it to the next level in 1980 and actually mandated that England gave Belize independence before the next sitting of the General Assembly. So in that 1980 resolution taken, it reaffirms again those positions where one, Belize must enjoy its right to independence with its territory intact. Two, any solution to the Guatemala claim shall not violate Belize territorial integrity. So that is why we're saying at the United Nations Security Council Belize, unless they have the General Assembly, because they are not at liberty to just erase these resolutions, they would have to take their case to the General Assembly again. This is the Security Council to say that we erred in making these resolutions, and they'll have to revoke 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80 resolutions in order to rule that Guatemala gets territory Belize. So why have we not been discussing this as an option, an alternative to go into the ICJ is beyond us, and it leaves us wondering if that some people just afraid and not have backbone to stand up and state their position.
Yeah. It's a critical point, very, very critical point when you look at it, when you juxtapose it and you compare the two in terms of advantage for Belize with regards to this unfounded claim. Because the bottom line is that the route going to the ICJ puts land on the table. If we adhere to what we should have adhered to with regards to the UN Security Council resolutions, land would not be an issue. It would be purely a concept of whether or not compensation would be granted if Guatemala is looked upon favorably with regards to their question. And that's something that Belizeans have to know. We have to get it out there. People have to understand that and realize, like Patrick said, they just can't wipe that clean. Those things are a matter of international record.
All right, let's see if this call is yours. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen and ladies. I'm a bit concerned as I've been listening because I keep hearing opinions instituted as facts. And I really would like to ask the guest, particularly Mr. Waters, if he could distinguish what is his opinion from what are actual facts. It's not fair to the people of Belize for opinions to be communicated and set forward as if they are indeed facts. The whole option of having monetary compensation be considered is an opinion, and really ought to be expressed as one. And I hope that before the end of the show, at least some distinction could be made. It's all good and fair and definitely the right of all of us as individual citizens of the country to put forward what we think should be the solution. But it ought not be true that our people are misled to believe that certain options are actually factually possible. Also, I would like to at least ask that if the consideration could be given towards working 5 or 6 years of UN resolutions, is that actually what I'm hearing? In those two options could be given a response, and gentlemen, your positions are valid in your own self, but I also want to say, when those persons who traveled on your behalf through the 70s did what they did. It was in an effort to move us to a state of independence, which was something that we as Belizeans said we wanted. Not every Belizean agreed with that position either, by the way, but they went through that process with independence, and in clauses 1 and 2 of the same documents that you are asking to be repealed. It was clearly stated that our integrity and territorial integrity would be maintained. So I'm very, very concerned.
All right.
And thank you for sharing your views.
Get off the line.
I'm asking that you would give us that privilege. State your opinions and separate them from what you are trying to present as facts. Thanks.
Certainly. If I could have, I don't know if she did not hear us properly. We are not calling for the UN resolutions to be repealed.
Yeah.
We're saying for Belize to lose territory in the event this matter reaches the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council would then have to go to the General Assembly with a position that they need them to repeal those resolutions. That is not our position to have them repealed. And I say kudos to all those great negotiators for this country leading up to 1975 that got these resolutions passed in the UN, because we were given advisor status and in that position we did some fantastic lobbying efforts, the kind that is not happening today, Belize. What happened prior to 1981, we just gave up after 1981 and stopped lobbying the international community to proceed with one settlement that does not include territorial integrity. Now, our opinion is that the preferred course of action would be to have this thing end up at the United Nations Security Council. Everything else I've said up here, ma'am, are facts. We've brought the black and white to show you where these resolutions are saying what they said. And we're saying that we have been betrayed, and we stand by that. Now, this is my opinion, that we have been betrayed by our leaders who got so caught up in taking corruption through 6 stages, instead of focusing on what they should have been focusing, which is on very real existential threat from Guatemala, who have now ratcheted up and acting as though they can use military might over us, which we maintain anything is possible, but they won't be able to retain this territory. So, I hope that addresses your concern, ma'am.
No, good morning.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Senator Bobby Lopez here. I don't have the document in front of me, but I think the part 2 of the lady's concern was that she seemed to misunderstand that monetary compensation is an option, has been an option. Twice offers were made, documented. If you could refer to that, because I'm sure you have the documentation there with the offers, I think 50,000 plus the cart road, and then 400,000 in the 1930s, 40s. If you could refer to that. But also, I just wanted to share with the audience now, I was looking at a documentary. Now, this is a British documentary. I'm not sure if it was BBC, but it was British made. In 1993, when they were announcing the withdrawal of British troops, which took place in 1994, as they were pulling out of Belize, it said clearly, Britain had failed to resolve the Guatemalan dispute. That's what the British documentary said. Okay, so if this is a failure of Britain, Britain had failed to have settled that Guatemalan dispute. And that is why it must be very, very clear. It was an Anglo-Guatemalan dispute before 1981, and it had included documented monetary compensation, and I'd like Patrick to kindly refer to that. I know time is running out, so because I just want the lady to understand that that is an option, has been an option. Britain failed to have resolved it and used that option twice, and now it passed over and it became not monetary, but now it's territorial waters and seas. Thank you, gentlemen. Good job.
If I could just add, just to piggyback a little bit on the question that was asked to Patrick, and the caller said, at least to the extent that separate opinions from facts. And one of the things that I'd like to add to what Patrick said is that, yes, we all have our opinions, but our opinions are steeped in the facts. The facts are right there in black and white. So it's not a matter of us getting up here and talking off the top of our heads. It's been researched. And my question to that caller would be, is it that you're questioning our opinion because of who the messenger is? I wish and I hope that when the learned attorneys and all of those that signed on to the compromise in 2008, that was the same position that the caller had in terms of what developed from that. I mention that because I find that in Belize, unfortunately, across the board, the level of cognitive dissonance is alarming. It's very alarming.
Could you talk to cognitive dissonance so that the public could understand what you're saying?
Well, basically, in layman's terms, you know, it's almost analogous to this. You have a person in an abusive relationship, and they've been abused and beaten down and downtrodden by all of the principles, to the point where they say, you know what, I have no choice. I just have to roll with the punches. I'm not going to assert myself. I'm not going to assert my rights. I'm not going to look for any other options. I will just accept what is being given to me. And it runs the gamut. It runs across the board, and it's manifests in many different phases. So that's basically what I'm looking at. Because my question directly to the caller is, had we been from either of the two major political parties, or if we had Esquire behind our names, would you be calling into question what we're saying in terms of it being an opinion or an opinion that is steeped in fact?
Okay, as Mr. Lopez mentioned, we're running out of time. Working on you too.
Perfectly. If I may, one quick backdrop, Belize. Everything has to be placed in a proper context in time, in our time frame. So in the 1800s, 1798, coming into 1820s, 1830s, the dynamics were very different. Right, very different, right? From 1798, after the Scottish skirmish, but we call it when we conquered this territory, from 1798 until we became a colony in not the Crown colony in 1862, but we were made one colony right after Guatemala claim we, 1831 Guatemala claim we, so then is when England made us a colony. Now, when she made us a colony, Guatemala's issue is that, hey, America, England, they encroach. England, they push. So Clayton Buller signed 1856, and at that point is when Belize needs to understand. The U.S. took one position and explained pretty much in this fashion to England, the same way I conquered part of this territory, and then I buy peace, the Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon, Mississippi up to Canada. You need to compensate Guatemala for Sibun to SARS too. That was America's position from 1856. I actually saw a map doing my research that effectively had the Sibun River as the divide for this country, with UK administration above and GUA administration below. So make we not fool with ourselves, Belize. America has its hand in this thing all along and have maintained that England needs to compensate Guatemala for Sibun to SARS too. Hence 1859 treaty now and the compensatory clause. So 3 years after the treaty, French and British and Spanish engineers did an estimate for this cart road. It came at 140,000. Guatemala said, give me 70,000. England said, that's too much. 1862, England offered 50,000, but they had 6 months only gave Guatemala to accept that. Guatemala went into a war with El Salvador, couldn't ratify that treaty. 2 years later, when they came back to England, said, we accept the 50,000. England said, I have been exonerated. I don't owe nothing anymore. You never accept my deal that I put to you. So the matter went back and forth until up in the 1930s, late 1930s, 1940s, when Guatemala got to the point where they said, well, you know what, I'll offer you 400,000 or you give me 400,000 for the territory. England never wanted that deal either, and so today we're left with the point, when I read the UN resolution, having understood that the UN would have known these things that I just told you of. The UN sees this thing as something that can be settled monetarily, and that's why the resolution kept saying, when an done settle this thing, Belize should retain territorial integrity. So that is the basis of why we're saying, if England were to be brought back to the table, and it becomes the Anglo-Guatemalan Belize dispute, let's say we're an interested party, but we should never be the claimant or the plaintiff in this matter. We're an interested party because it involved the territory and some issues that Guatemala had with England before the UN gave us our independence. But at the ending of it, unless England is brought back to the table, with Guatemala having the might over Belize, and with we going to take on England beef, we left with territorial integrity in jeopardy because England is not at this table. So yes, we've been calling for the British to get back in this thing because the UN called for them to settle it. They called for Belize to be the observer, not for Belize to be the four player in settling this thing. And so that is where we would like to see our Ministry of Foreign Affairs start doing some lobbying through ambassadors around the world, where just they collect one fat salary and they live large in some country. We need to have them lobbying this issue with information, what we're putting out here today.
So what would be your central message as you leave us this morning? What is the central message you're leaving for Belizeans?
Belizeans, learn to question authority, be inquisitive, conduct your due diligence. Do not blindly accept what those who are popular say. The answers are out there. You have to take ownership of your country, your nationality, your Belizean identity, because this is a serious situation. The situation is serious, there's no doubt about it. And we need to be able to put forward our ideas. We need a government that is willing to listen to the people, to govern the people and not rule them. And my final word is that with regards to this, Belizeans take it seriously, because irrespective of whether or not where you live is part of what Guatemala is claiming, as a Belizean, if they take 1 centimeter of this country, it affects all of us. So if you're living up north, if you're living in Belize City or anywhere in between, this affects every last one of us all the same. Take it seriously, do your due diligence, and listen to alternative perspectives that are out there, which are based and steeped in the facts.
Belize, I'd just like to make one distinction. Now, we are tasked with being activists as well as political aspirants. So the BTV is a vehicle that allows us to channel our activism through. Because rightly so, until you get into the house, you can't effect the changes. The fact that the issues that these activist organizations champion that we're a part of are national, and we are of the alternative political view, it causes a lot of the citizenry to kind of not listen to what we're saying, just kind of write way off as political aspirants. But we were too kept with the activists in this country, because we're taking a long-term view where we're building something that who's coming from behind guaranteed to win. We may not witness the win, but we will build it so who comes from behind win. Along the way, there's a need for activism. And so the BTV in its activism has made the Belizean aware of the situation on the ground, which is totally not in line with what our leaders are having us believe, because then they come by with Guatemala, they have a PEACE, when they have people that come for PIECE Belize, and then they come hostile. So we shouldn't be having no friendly relationship with the only country in this region that is really a threat to our territorial integrity and have been ratcheting it up. So please keep an ears to the ground. We will be making our rounds with this alternative to the ICJ. We welcome any opportunity to speak. I can be reached at 634-0185 to set up any little sessions, and this is what we enjoy doing, Belize, educating you all on the issues that you need to be informed on so you can make the right decisions.
Patrick Rogers, Paco Smith, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in and sharing with us.
Thanks for having us.
We take a break. We'll be back.